Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. In this week's show, we'll look at the change of heart on the reporting of suicide in the media and at the depiction of smoking on the screen, a bad message or simple reality. But first, it's time for a news mash and a remarkable new media story. It's hard to imagine where you might find a good news story in an attempted rape on an obscure Alabama housing project, but bear with us. Antoine Dodson, who chased off the intruder from his sister's bedroom, got passionate for the news camera.
He's climbing in your windows, he's snatching your people up, trying to rape them, so y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband because they raping everybody out here.
We'll let Know Your Meme explain what happened next.
Despite the serious subject matter, Antoine's emotional, over-the-top interview proved to be really funny. Antoine's original interview saw a number of imitators and parodies, but on July 31st, one very important variation showed up.
He's climbing in your windows, he's snatching your people up, trying to rape them, so y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband, because they raping everybody out here.
The magic auto-tune box that helps Britney Spears sing in tune can, suitably tweaked, make anyone a singer. And at the hands of some pasty white culture jammers called the Gregory Brothers, Antoine became a viral star.
You can run and tell that, run and tell that, run and tell that, boy.
That video was viewed 30 million times on YouTube and has inspired more than 2,500 cover versions. The original even became a bona fide pop hit. Now, Antoine has a website where he talks to his new fans.
She's wanting to know, have I made any money off of anything I've been doing? Of course, you know I did, you know. Do I look dumb?
He's on Twitter and he's nationwide.
It began as a serious news report and is now one of the hottest songs on the planet.
And with a half share of tens of thousands of iTunes sales, he and his family are on their way somewhere better.
Dodson says he'll use this windfall to move his entire family someplace safer.
I hate that it happened this way, but a lot of good has came out.
It was a sad beginning, but it's a good ending.
We don't run around crying and acting sad. We just dust our shoulders off and keep on moving.
The cliche would be only in America, but in this case, yes, only in America. For many years, New Zealand news media have been restrained in their reporting of deaths by suicide by the Coroner's Act. The Act, tightened in 2006, says that without the coroner's authority, they cannot make public any particular relating to the way a self-inflicted death occurred. Even when a coroner makes a finding of suicide, the media may only report that and the name, address and occupation of the deceased. But now Chief Coroner Judge Neil McLean has called for greater openness in the reporting and discussion of suicide. Judge McLean is with me now, along with the press reporter Rebecca Todd, author of a series of stories on the issue under the banner Our Hidden Tragedy. Judge, I'm interested that as recently as March, you were expressing concern to journalists that news media were breaching Section 71 of the Coroner's Act by reporting the details of suicides and even implying that the death was suicide. Does that indicate you've changed your mind in the interim?
No, we're talking about two different parts of Section 71. The first part that I was concerned about is the bit that says pre a coroner making a determination, no one should say anything about it, whether it was suicide or anything about the circumstances at all, without the permission of the coroner. That's what I was talking about then. What I'm more recently talking about is the second leg, which is there has been an inquiry, be it an inquest or otherwise, and there is a threshold there that a coroner has to get over, that he or she shall not allow publication of any details unless satisfied it will do no harm to the public.
So whatever happens, if we do see a change, this greater openness only applies after there has been a finding of suicide?
Yes.
It's still not okay to speculate in advance?
Not in my view, no.
I wonder if the media are pushing the boundaries now, as you suggested in March, won't they simply push them further if the law is changed?
Well, if you can't trust the media, who can you trust?
Well, I'm not sure if I can trust every newspaper reporter. That's the point, surely, is that you yourself said that that they were crossing the line. If you're going to move that line, aren't they just going to cross your new line?
Possibly, and that's why I think we need to approach this cautiously, or to use the phrase I've used, go into it gently. But the feedback I'm getting thus far from what I'd call the responsible mainstream media is that they are acutely aware of where the boundaries are and won't be pushing it.
Has your view on this changed over time? And if that's the case, why?
No, it hasn't, although it would be fair to say I think that practice it may be changing. And it's not just here, it's also in Australia as well.
Rebecca, your stories on this topic have been, I think everyone agrees, quite influential. How did you get rolling on the topic?
Well, it's something, mental health is an area that I've taken an interest in since becoming the health reporter for the press. And suicide's obviously a big part of that. You know, it links in with lots of areas of mental health, and it's something that can be difficult to sort of fit into the daily news hole. So I thought, you know, perhaps a series would be the best way to, you know, look at some of the issues without having to sort of have that hook every day specifically, you know, to get it past the chief reporter. So, yeah.
Did your view of the issue change in the course of doing those stories?
Well, I obviously became much more aware of what the public felt about it, which I hadn't known before, that they were universally, actually surprisingly, very supportive of it. Yeah, no, my own view...
That included even families who had been affected by the suicide of a family member?
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who don't agree. I'm not saying everyone does, but everyone who picked up the phone or emailed me specifically, and a lot of people said, you know, I've never written in before, I've never rung before, but this is so important to me that I really wanted to get my views across. Yeah, said that, you know, they'd felt really isolated and they were happy to know, you know, that there might be some more discussion about this, and it's not something you have to be ashamed of. So.
You did something in one of those stories that I don't think anyone's done before, and you gave us graphs and tables of methods of suicide. What was the response to that? Because when you look at the Act, that was quite a courageous thing to do.
Yeah, well, we had to think about that, and I actually spoke to the judge about whether printing those would be, against the Act, and he said he thought that, you know, the statistics themselves wouldn't be. They're not related to particular people. They're pretty stark. They're, you know, it's nasty looking at them. It's not nice, but that's the reality of suicide, and I think that's what we were trying to convey. So.
Judge, as Rebecca said, she called you. Did that help focus your mind on this? Because you seem to have become much more vocal now.
It did. It was a very timely call because it coincided with a number of things that were going on, including the fact that the Freedom and Media group, representing mainstream media, had some months ago asked me to come and talk to them about that cautionary note I issued earlier in the year. And then Rebecca picked up that story and ran with it, and it's really growing, and all credit to her for doing that.
And you did meet with the Media Freedom group, which is composed of
yes,
editors,
yes.
This week. How did that go?
Good, I think, from my point of view, very informative. It was a unique occasion for me to have really representative of all the mainstream media in New Zealand sitting around a table, people who are in competition with each other, but you know, able to talk together about a common problem.
Did you feel there was the possibility of a reasonable compromise? Would they want you to go further than you're willing to?
I think that remains to be seen, but the very fact of the way the press and Rebecca have gone about this suggests to me that, you know, we can trust the media to deal with this appropriately. And so there may be room for compromise. Yeah,
Rebecca, your editor obviously saw something in this because, you know, you got the support to do that big series of stories. I wonder whether how you feel about the responsibility of some of your other colleagues in the profession. Do you think you can trust everyone to report responsibly?
I don't really know, but I thought it was interesting. Something a reader wrote in and said that it would be worth taking the risk of the few times where you do get bad journalism, you do get people acting irresponsibly, like you do in lots of areas, for the benefit, the wider benefit of, you know, bringing out some public discussion. And that's kind of what I think as well, that in any, of course you will have cases where, the judge is unhappy about the way something's been done or whatever, but that, you've got to weigh up the positives and negatives.
Do you think it's important to look at societal and economic factors as well, which I think you touched on a bit in those stories, but for example, if you look at our appalling youth suicide rate, that started to spike in the mid-80s at the same time as the economic reforms. It may just be a correlation, but surely that's something worth looking at too.
Yeah, well, a youth health expert in Christchurch actually said that she's very concerned that at the moment, you know, with the recession, youth unemployment is, again skyrocketed, and what the impact will be of that, because she feels it hasn't yet been felt, and that, definitely it's an area where we should be paying some attention, and that, there's a real risk.
No, Judge, I have to say that the law as it's been so far hasn't been formulated on the basis of mere whim. There has been research that has advised against too much reporting of suicide in the media. I'll quote Craig Colquhoun of Massey University. He says, more than 100 published articles have found that suicide media reports are associated with increases in subsequent suicide rates. We can't just ignore that, can we?
No, we can't, and it's a perfectly valid point of view, but there is an equally valid point of view in the opposite direction, and that's the dilemma for me and for coroners.
So where do we go now? What's the ideal state? It looks like you've got the political goodwill for a change to the Coroners Act. What happens next, and where would you like to see it end?
Well, I think where myself and the coroners are to some extent in a listening phase now. We are genuinely interested in hearing what people want to say about this. And in the back of my mind, I have ultimately a responsibility, if I think it's appropriate, that I could issue a practice note to coroners recommending a way of approaching this. But that requires a wide degree of consultation with the coroners, and I believe with the wider community.
Thank you, Judge Neil McLean and Rebecca Todd. After the break, smoking on screen.